for warm welcome. AI4 is a familiar stomping ground for us, and has been an incredible kind of community builder for us in New York. Thank you so much for hosting us, as always. And actually, it reminds me of when we started our first conference here. Maybe I'll start off with a slide that we used then.
Full screen. Full screen. Can you put it on full screen mode? Right up there.
We started 2020. How many of you have been at AI4 in 2019, 2020, just before COVID started? This is my daughter's poem at the time, and she had a second poem on the same topic, to be alive, search the university, find your home, changed to be alive is to be the courage the world needs. I think what this world has in scarcity is courage. All life is time series. And I think it's interesting to note that BC is practically before COVID. So it's so awesome to see all of you here in person. It's probably the first real in-person event we're presenting at, and hopefully the world reopens in ways we can meet and greet. 2019 BC is when we started a species war against COVID. And I think it's interesting and important to address that pandemics usually follow with wars, and wars follow pandemics. And I think it's important to know that there's vaccines and there's peace. And it's important to not lose the context in which we meet today. The world on the verge of potential war, big war. And so we need empathy. A lot of people, most of you worked with your families throughout the last 2 years, persevering to make AI possible in finance. And I couldn't agree with Matt's comment that reverse mathematics is one of the most interesting things happening in AI. We're trying to find axioms from theorems that are working backwards first principles. I'm super excited at that work there. But also we need compassion. I think both sides of the story, right? Of course, we want to root for the ones standing for freedom. At the same time, there's people on both sides and we need compassion. And of course, we solidarity for people fighting for freedom, because we here in New York stand for freedom. And I think it's important to know that we started the movement for AI and open source for freedom, and freedom is not necessarily free, and those who have lost it are the ones who are going to miss it the most. And that's why we think of H2O, when we think of H2O as an open source framework for AI, we really wanted to give innovation freedom to everyone in the world, and that's kind of how we got started, the democratization of AI. And never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals like yourself can change the world. And most of you here on the floor come from large organizations. It's really hard to bring transformation in large organizations. What Matt was talking about is just incredibly hard, right? So being able to bring transformation in several large organizations, that's what we watched happen over the last few years. And I think I want to leave the thought process around how to use AI for good. But before that, it's very important to know that an eye for an eye can actually make the whole world blind. We've been using H2O to predict hurricanes. Over the last 2 years, we've lent our top data scientists, the Kaggle Grandmasters, to work on COVID and to truly actually bring kind of high level, very high-end data science work for hospitals, for the nurses on the front lines who've been fighting the real war. And this city has weathered a lot of war in the last 2 years, a lot of loss. And I think it's really important to understand that empathize with the people on the front line as we try to democratize health. Super gratitude for that population and all of the world that has come together. I'm gonna switch to kind of what we are extremely passionate about. As a company, we've been focused on democratization of AI, and the topic today is about governance. Let me touch on a couple of ways we're trying to do that. A lot of our customers over the last few years have been applying AI to solve problems much so mundane as they might appear, for whether to the number of every route of every package that you received from UPS was using automatic machine learning, which package comes in which route. All iPhones have become the kind of the pass to get credit, pass to use, almost a lifeline for most of us. But I think iPhone stealing has been a #1 use case for some of our customers, how to fight iPhone stealing. And obviously groups of people working together has become a very strong theme, both online and offline. But now, more than ever, e-business is, while it's growing very fast, it's also under a lot of attack, as you've seen with some of our customers using AI to fight organized crime online. PayPal, Paytm, Apple Pay, Alipay, almost every payment system across the globe is using H2O today. About 1 billion API calls go through our system through MasterCard every day, fighting fraud. Still other places, equity, corporate bond, and municipal bond pricing, mortgage-backed securities. A lot of that work is being done, but some of our customers like Franklin Templeton and Market Access. Long story short, almost every large bank in every continent is using H2O today, and AI is at the forefront of transforming their businesses. Many of you are quite familiar with we start with a single use case, but organizations as a whole are beginning to transform with AI. And I think that's the theme that we would like to kind of touch on, how to bring organization-wide change. And that's, an app store is a perfect metaphor for that. And financial services has been at the forefront of that change in trying to bring transformation across the vertical. And H2O today is able to help customers both make AI, but operate and also deploy it in a way that you can actually transform every walk of your business and bring the best in data science from one function that you typically have to every other functions. And that ability to consume AI, to monetize your data, is going to be at the forefront of bringing AI to your businesses and your customers. In a sense, we need continuously learning containers. We need to integrate different personalities in our data is a team sport, and we want to bring all 3 different functions into one place. And that's kind of where you're going to see a lot more of how do I bring that collaboration between the different the business folks as well as algorithms and the data. The last mile of innovation here is going to be between domain expertise and data science. I would say that the one thing to protect as a large organization or a small one is brand and community. And how you use data to protect your brand, protect your community is going to be at the heart of AI. And I think every company needs to be an AI company, and every company needs to be a fintech company, as some of you have already realized. And data is at the heart of this transformation, and data is indeed the new code. Let me leave you with an innovation that's really powering much of this transformation these days, which is how do you do pre-built model stores? How do you use those pre-built models, transform for your local data, so you can then quickly, in a no-code fashion, and so you can quickly use the best in deep learning, the best in data science to power your transformation. Governance becomes heart of this. because otherwise we would not be able to tell great stories with that level of confidence. Probably most of us evidence the incredible challenge that Zillow faced for deploying a model in production without sufficient amount of adversarial testing. This, I want to jump quickly to one theme that is going to really be powerful, is we need to be able to tell really important stories from your data, right? So data scientists, we are obsessed with the data side, but the business folks really are trying to tell a great story. And I think while people think the breaks are difficult, but they are the ones that allow us to drive faster. And that's where governance comes in. And model and data governance improves safety and speed. All models are wrong, some models are useful. And I think simple interpretable models have been at the heart of much of the transformation we've seen. They're easier to understand, easier to replicate, and powering that with alternate data sets is going to be important. But models are code, but models are also data. So model governance is actually really data governance. And a lot of model debugging that we've been seeing live in customers is actually related to data not being perfect, right? So going back to data lineage and governance and CI/CD integration for data and models is going to be at the heart of AI Cloud. With that, I'm going to power some of these kind of, I would say, examples with a live showcase here. Many of you have seen our continuously learning AI to do AI engine called driverless AI. This is actually using alternative data set, like connection between people as a way to create credit scores. Now, the idea is that many of our customers, non-finance customers, are beginning to use phones and how you're connected with each other as a way to predict reputation score or predict high net worth and credit, obviously. So I think that's beginning to see a lot of rise of non-finance companies emerge into fintech, whether they're in retail or companies like the telcos. This is our automatic machine learning engine that's essentially continuously doing what a typical data scientist or a grandmaster would be doing in a Kaggle grandmaster. It's building models continuously and fine-tuning the features to give you a model that is essentially that's continuously learning from data, even as the data is changing. The ability to power that back into an application that you can then use to start building a rich application, that's kind of where the App Store comes in and the end-to-end cloud engines. The idea is that you're able to use a low-code framework to start telling powerful stories from your data and not stop at the AUC, but go one level up to power the edge with more intelligence, the applications on the edge. Explainability is at the heart of some of this, right? Without telling a good breaking down black box models into storytelling, into figuring out where the bias might be coming from is going to be just as important. Let me show an explainability piece. Again, you think of explainability as a lot of microservices, not just one size fits all, right? Because every application has its own unique demands and ability to, and they need to power stories, and each application has a very different level of needs for explaining. This is a black box. This is a locally linear. It's back solving with locally linear models for a complete black box neural network model. In this case, we're looking at sentiment analysis, right? Sort of for Yelp-like reviews on the why part. Another powerful use case that typically our customers are beginning to use AI for is the last 2 years. It's nothing but an explosion in the amount of data that's come from Zoom videos or audio and NLP, I should say. So we built a low-code engine called Hydrogen Torch, no-code engine for Hydrogen Torch that takes a pre-built models and starts telling really ability to fine-tune it to your local data and start tuning it. And here we're trying to predict fashion trends based on data that's publicly available. Again, ability to kind of take pre-built models, but not necessarily become rocks. Like the rate at which the space is changing, people want to be able to understand the rate at which the space. Here's another powerful use case for document AI. It's another engine we released. Many of our customers are beginning to use documents as source of data. Right? So that's people are not necessarily separating time series from data that's coming in form of documents. Again, the accuracy in some of these documents historically was in this high 80s. We've gotten that to almost as close to high 90s. We've deployed this for cancer referrals at UCSF recently, and that has flushed a lot of the upstream work of matching patients with the right kind of doctors and clinics. One thing that we're beginning to see is people want to derive business rules from data, and then look at what kind of rules capture most of their customers. This is taking Shapley values and then creating a UMAP cluster of it, but figuring out why a particular customer is churning. So in this particular case, you want to capture the whole of this, basically pull out the business rule and then look at the following set of rules to see what are the ones that matter most for your customer. Again, churn prevention is saving a lot of our customers, a lot of especially the larger the customer, the more business impact it has, hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes for a single basis point. In a sense, I think what we are proposing is a very, very powerful engine that brings the combination of AI engines behind the scenes, whether it's PyTorch, TensorFlow, or H2O, driverless AI, or Hydrogen Torch and document AI. So you can really bring all of that to express very powerful stories. Here's what happened to New Yorkers during COVID. Many of them, you heard the stories of them moving to Florida and Dallas, but actually, in essence, they actually drove across the highways, parked themselves along Montana and other places, and we've seen real estate change, dramatic real estate change in upstate New York and in most of these places. And they're also expecting really solid, the same level of demand that is expected off of them here. Another powerful use of this has been to deploy the Grandmaster's models to hospitals at the front lines. And this is an app looking at the COVID hospital simulation, and it's being used by a lot of our customers, but also public service. Two things that we were super proud of during this last year is where we co-created with AT&T a feature store that allows them to look at things happening across both the Apple ecosystem and the Google ecosystem and start giving much richer insights to their customers. As we call it the feature store, and feature stores, pre-built feature stores, model stores, and app stores are going to be at the heart of delivering AI to the last mile. doing something similar with CBA, where we're working with them, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, working with them to transform their typical day-in-the-life use cases to use cases that their customers can use and transform their customer experiences. We think that this is the beginning of how AI is going to be really transformative. It's working really closely and deeply with our customers, and with that last mile integration between AI providers, if you will, or AI software companies like ours, and actual verticals like yours is going to be at the heart of the last mile. I think that that kind of brings me to the final piece of the presentation, which is AI is a force for transformative good. We should be able to bring a lot of change together, and intelligence is the edge, and I think we should be able to, in the metaphor of our colors, black and yellow, be the light in the darkness. I did have one, did want to leave on a fun note here.
Кто в конце концов здесь царь горы? Народ управляет. Неконтролируемая демократия. Мне нравится эта игра. Давно я не испытывал такой прилив адреналина. Господа, нам надо чаще встречаться.
Я люблю свою страну, люблю свою жену, люблю свою собаку. Я всего на свете член, почти что сумел, но редко лезу в драку. Знает весь двор мой приговор, слуга народа. У меня почти все есть, достоинство и честь, и даже крики браво. Персональный самолет мне выделил народ, а что имею право на животу? Вот тут набью тату, слуга народа.
Thank you.